My name is Ivan Rodriguez, and this is my persuasive speech for Speech 101. Have you ever had somebody watch you while you were in your house? While you were eating dinner? Or just laying on the couch watching TV? Have they ever tapped on your window to try to get your attention? Or even yelled at you? Have they taken pictures of you or recorded a video of you without your permission? I would like you to imagine that you couldn't get away from them. You couldn't close your blinds or your curtains, and you couldn't call the police for whatever reason. If you could imagine that feeling, that constant paranoia, that constant anxiety, then maybe you can imagine what it's like to be an animal in captivity, in a zoo specifically. Perhaps you work for a zoo, or you have young children that are interested in zoos, and you don't see how it affects them. But would you find zoos entertaining anymore if you understood just how deeply traumatizing their housing can be? In this presentation, I will share with you information that comes from multiple news sources such as the Chicago Tribune, The Atlantic, as well as livescience.com. I will also share data from nonprofit organizations like fundforanimals.org and sentientmedia.org. And lastly, I will present a quote from a book written by a Swiss biologist titled Wild Animals in Captivity. Many of us are not aware of the harm zoos cause to the wildlife they house, and for that reason I will be persuading you today to boycott your local zoo. First, I will inform you of the history of abuse and neglect that is unfortunately far too common in zoological societies and gardens. After that, I will discuss ways in which we can replace zoos and what we can replace zoos with. And lastly, I will give you some pros and cons of the future depending on your actions. With that out of the way, let's discuss the issues that are caused by the existence of zoos. First, the problem that is most obvious, what we always see when we go to zoos, is how small those enclosures can be. There's maybe less than 1,000 feet for most animals, save for the big cats, the bears, the elephants, if some zoos have them, which zoos in Illinois no longer do. And I have an official statement from both Lincoln Park and Brookfield stating that they discontinued their elephant exhibits to offer a larger space for black rhinoceroses. I don't know how many of you have gone to the zoo, especially during this pandemic. I went to the zoo with my girlfriend about I want to say June. And when we went to see the rhinoceroses, there was maybe one or two. And I had not noticed a difference in the size of the enclosure, as I've gone to the zoo almost every single year, because I do like to support conservation, obviously. Every zoo, regardless of town and country, simply doesn't have the access to the amount of space necessary. I mean, there's no way to get around that. In Africa, where most of the larger animals that are kept in zoos are from, they have hundreds of thousands of miles to roam. And, you know, obviously we can't afford that amount of space. And I believe that if we can't afford it, we just shouldn't be allowed to house those certain animals. There are certain species that can be kept in smaller cages, and they find peace in smaller habitats. But an elephant is not made to live in an area that's you know, less than a percentage of their natural home. Animals like big cats and large herbivores spend the majority of their lives exploring. They roam around. They don't even stay in one place from year to year. So I believe it's completely unethical. Heini Hediger is a Swiss biologist known as the father of zoo biology. In his novel, Wild Animals in Captivity, he states, "It has been shown that in freedom, the wild animal has an urge to escape from an enemy, especially from man, as soon as the flight distance of that animal concerned is exceeded." Flight distance is the perimeter around an animal, as long as it's in their line of sight, or within their senses, is a perimeter of space in which another living organism can enter before it feels the need to escape. For humans, that perimeter is a lot larger than most others because humans are seen as natural predators to almost every animal in existence, which easy to see because we eat just about every damn thing. Since flight reaction is the most significant behavior pattern in the wild animal's life in freedom, it must be a prime concern in captivity, which it is currently not. The smallest cage in theory must thus be a circle with a diameter twice the size of the flight distance. It is obvious that in practice, enclosures of such dimensions are seldom available for captive animals. And that was a quote from Heini Hediger in his book, Wild Animals in Captivity, from 1964. And obviously not much has changed since then. If anything, the only thing that has changed is how zoos are being marketed. Zoos are shown as great learning experiences, but in a study done by Eric Jensen, he studied a group of over 3,000 children and found that less than even a third of them had learned anything from their experience in a zoo, much less that of conservation. I have a quote from his study that states, When paired with ethical criticisms of holding animals in captivity, the lack of evidence of learning has been used to call into question the legitimacy of the zoo as an institution. We surveyed over 3,000 children before and after a zoo visit and found only 1/3 had a positive learning experience, meaning they had learned something factual. About 15% of the kids had picked up incorrect information. That comes from the Atlantic in 2016. So if about half of the children half of the amount of children that had learned something positive had learned something factually wrong, then there's kind of a clash of whether anybody had learned anything. Animal exploitation is another huge issue when it comes to zoos, as they are animals being used as as advertisement, basically. You know, we see the banners as you go down Lakeshore Drive, or I don't know what street that is, but towards Lincoln Park Zoo, of the tigers and the bears. We see the banners on the road, and it draws your attention to that. You want to see something that you wouldn't normally see every day. And that attraction of something exotic, something that you've never seen before, is something that the animals themselves do not profit off of. And some may say that they profit by being housed and being sheltered, but in the wild, which many of these animals are taken from, they would have no issue finding their own shelter, finding their own meal. Hunting is not a problem for them. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that zoos are housing animals that could not live in the wild. They are housing injured animals or animals from other like circuses and other institutions that are neglecting them, when the reality is more than 60% of animals are being taken directly from the wild, from their mothers at a young age, and they're not being taken when they are injured. They are healthy when they are taken. Their mothers are culled, they're hunted, and then when the children are found, they're taken by, I'm trying to remember the name for them, but they're taken by the hunters and they're sold to zoological societies. Now, it's a gray area. You can say in some cases they're protecting them from the hunters because they would sell them for skins and bones and other stuff. But in the same regard, since the zoos are directly supporting the hunting practices, they are perpetuating that. If they weren't buying the animals, then the hunters would not have enough money for ammunition, guns, and other hunting resources that they would need to capture those animals. So it's not a easy situation, but it's definitely not one that zoos are taking the ultimate care of the animal's well-being. As far as animal exploitation goes, we see this all the time with pharmaceutical testing. But when they are on display in a zoo, it's usually left to just be they're just used as a display piece. Zoe Rosenberg, who is a researcher for a nonprofit organization, Sentient Media, wrote in her article titled "Why We Need Wildlife Sanctuaries." She wrote, "Zoos engage in animal exploitation by profiting off from the visitors' attention and conservation grants they garner, while providing captive animals with poor quality of life. Since 1995, zoos have turned to antidepressants, tranquilizers, and antipsychotic drugs to alleviate depression and aggression among the animals that they house." Rosenberg, 2019. So yeah, they profit, they make the money off of seeing the tiger, as well as selling merchandise for the tigers, and as well when they pull people in with the attraction of seeing those things, they also get to sell them food. They sell tickets to exclusive exhibitions. And all this is done in the name of conservation, but it's easy to see how I don't really think that they are doing it in the spirit of conservation. Imagine if someone broke into your home and killed your parents and then stole you and sold you to a man who kept you in a house with all glass walls and windows, and you had no more privacy, and other families came up and looked at you, and you saw the other children, and they got to go home with their families and live out their lives, and you got to stay in your glass prison. I would think that that would be an incredibly traumatic experience for everyone involved. You know, like, if you kept your dog in a cage for 99% of the day and let it only out to go to the bathroom and to eat, you would be considered a horrible pet owner. But we don't use the same way of thinking when it comes to bigger, larger predator type animals. And I don't think that's right. I think that all animals should be treated equally, and we should treat them all with respect. I want to talk about some possible solutions. My suggestion, if you genuinely care about conservation, is to dedicate your time and money to a wildlife sanctuary in your area. There are literally hundreds in Illinois alone. And just even in this area, the area around Triton College, there are about 20. If you do a quick search on wildlifeillinois.com or .org. Let me see. Yeah, if you look up wildlifeillinois.org, you can see a list of all of the conservations in your area, and you can get it down to just a few miles around you, and there are still dozens. Especially up in Schaumburg, there are a lot of wildlife sanctuaries, especially for horses and other birds. I mean, birds in general, like falcons and eagles. Wildlife sanctuaries provide a safe haven for injured animals. They only pick up injured animals that have been abused, neglected, psychologically tortured by circuses and other institutions, even former zoo animals that are retired and moved to facilities that 9 out of 10 times end up euthanizing them. They attempt to purchase them because there's really no other legal way to get them out of those situations. But after purchasing them, they do treat them with the utmost respect and support for their well-being. They place the welfare of their rehabilitated animals above the opportunity to profit off of their unique appearance. It is true that there are many wildlife sanctuaries that do allow you to view the animals that they are rehabilitating. However, the housing that they give each animal is much larger, and they're far more spread out, and they have tons of foliage. They aren't built, their enclosures are not built in a way that is made for them to be presented. They are built in a way that makes the animal feel at home. So, you know, if you go there and you walk around, you might not see any animals at all, because if they don't feel like being seen, they always have the opportunity to shelter themselves, which I think is a much better way to do it. They still get the profit for the conservation, for the resources, like the food they need to feed their animals, while not fully, at least, exploiting them. I think it's a much better alternative. Ben Callison is a director for the Cleveland Amory Black Beauty Ranch, which is a wildlife sanctuary that houses over 40 different species. I got that number from funforanimals.org, which is the website that they use as a domain. It also is a website for a couple other sanctuaries and their network. In an article by Callison for livescience.com, he points out wildlife rescue from circuses, roadside zoos, and backyards reside in sanctuaries. All captive bred wild animals, including big cats and primates, are unable to be responsibly returned to the wild. The reasons for this are both biological, as they are bred in a way that damages their instincts, as well as they have been psychologically damaged as the animals have become dependent on humans for survival. They don't understand the concept of hunting for themselves. Callis in 2014. These animals are being rescued from horrible living spaces. Unlike animals in zoos, which are either captured from the wild and often taken from their families, or they are bred in captivity, and captivity is all they ever know. It's pretty messed up if you think about it. Like, imagine if we held prisoners, held like a co-ed prison, and male and female inmates were able to have children, but their children were still held in prison. It doesn't seem right. They depend mainly on private funding. I'm speaking on the wildlife sanctuaries right now. And if they do not receive this funding, they need to rehouse their animals to other sanctuaries, which is why we need to step in and provide funding, as little as we may be able to provide, $1, maybe all we are able to give, but that is still $1 that goes towards a hungry, sick, afraid animal, instead of in the pocket of some business owner that is just using his money to cause pain to some innocent creature. This leads to overcrowding. If they are being rehoused in other sanctuaries, this leads to overcrowding and under-resourced living spaces. Some sanctuaries are forced to house almost 10 big cats to a single enclosure, which is not good for their mental health, as some big cats, like tigers, are known as solitary species, which once they grow to a point where they are on their own, they usually do not live with a pride or a pack. So to be housed with other animals leads to rivalries and stuff like that. Or they are forced to euthanize, which can sometimes be even worse. Both options are unsatisfactory, and the only solution is to aid in any way we can, whether that be with your wallet or your time and energy by volunteering. Many sanctuaries do allow people to volunteer after certain specific training has been completed, and this helps them because they don't have to pay someone to feed the animals, which is leaves them more money to use on the rehabilitation process. So, as I'm wrapping this up, let's review what we've discussed. I began with an appeal and asked you to put yourself in the place of the animals that are being housed. I then gave you some cons and some pros, what we can do to benefit these creatures. And now I would ask you if you are interested in offering your support, I recommend visiting wildlifeillinois.org to find an animal sanctuary near you. I would like to highlight an organization named SOAR, all capital SOAR, which is a rescue for hawks, eagles, and other raptors. Their email address is fly, FLY, at symbol, SOAR Raptors, SOARRAPTORS.org. Also, if you are interested in visiting a wildlife sanctuary in this area, one of the best is Willowbrook Wildlife Center, which rehabilitates species that are native to the Glen Ellen area. Their number is 630-933-7200. My hope, at least, is that you remember this presentation the next time you hear of or see something about wildlife conservation or a zoo near you. Maybe the next time you hear about an advertisement for a new exhibit opening up in the zoo, you think twice before rushing to see it, as that new exhibit may house an animal that has just recently lost their family and lost their entire way of life. And I hope this influences your opinion on the matter as well as your actions. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to persuade you against visiting another zoological society, and hopefully in the future you do donate or advocate in some way for wildlife welfare. Thank you. Good night.